All right, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here for our February Rail and Transit Subcommittee meeting. It's good to see you all. We have a number of things on the agenda today. I know we have a 1-hour meeting, and then some of you may be going over to the, I can't remember if it's Innovation or Environmental Subcommittee, which will be next, and I think in the other room. But I do have a few updates for you. Jen DeBrule's going to give us just a very high-level update on what is happening in our grant cycle for our public transportation program. Emily will be talking a bit about our updates to our freight program that we're going to be presenting later for an action item as well. And then we also have a RIA application as well to talk about today. No, actually, I should say Emily was going to talk about the Freight Advisory Committee, and Mike Todd's going to give us an update on the freight program. If we start to run a little late, I may shift some of the agenda items around, but most of these should be pretty quick. So, as you may know, we're in our grant cycle right now. That those applications closed on February 1st. Our staff right now is in the process of evaluating all of those. At the March meeting, you'll be receiving, for the first time, some more detailed draft recommendations from DRPT that will become the basis of the draft public hearing as well. So just a few other updates. We have.
So when you say the draft public hearing, are you talking about this?
I'm sorry, the draft set. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I was reading something about a public hearing at the same time. Sorry. And I think that is the majority of my updates I'll be giving in the full CTB meeting later. So why don't we go ahead and get to it? I'm going to let Jen start with an update on the merit program.
Sure. So big February 1st deadline for all of our applications. It always feels a little bit like an avalanche when all those come in. Not a huge year for us. I would say it's a pretty typical year. We did get 181 applications for capital assistance. The majority of those are for state of good repair projects, which is pretty typical for our program. So my staff is working right now to score almost 500 line items. So it's good. We do this every year. We've got it down. So they're working really quickly, but still mostly state of good repair. It's 385 line items of state of good repair, about 100 that are minor enhancement or can't be scored as state of good repair. And then we have 4 projects that were submitted as major expansion. A couple of those, I think, are not ready to be major expansion projects, so we're going to be working through some issues with some of those applications. So not a big expansion year, which would be what we would expect right now as well. We did get operating applications from all of our agencies. We're still carrying over pre-COVID data while we're working through what to do with performance. We've got a broad range of performance out there amongst our systems. We also have a few other application-based programs that I've wanted to mention. We have a technical assistance program. We received 23 applications for that program. 9 of them are for required plans. So that's our transit strategic plans, our commuter assistance program strategic plans, 2 surveys, and 13 other technical studies, things like electrification, microtransit. We continue to see our transit systems working to put more innovation into what they do.
Is there enough money to cover all of that?
We haven't quite got there yet. The thing that we have working in our favor is we do have the new federal bill that also, in addition to increasing the money for capital that goes to the transit agencies, it also increases the money that comes to DRPT for statewide planning. So we feel like we're going to be able to accommodate those requests, if not through the state program, through our federal resources. We did receive 8 applications for demonstration projects. Unlike recent years, it's actually more on the new service front and creative in the new service front. So we've got some additional microtransit projects, one in Albemarle County, and an expansion of the microtransit project that we have that's done very well in Gloucester. So those are 2 microtransit. And then we have the Acton Express out in the connecting Stanton and Charlottesville that's done very well in its first year of service. They're coming back for 2nd year. And Shenandoah, which is up in the middle northern Shenandoah Valley that just started operations, they're also doing very well. So they've come back for 2nd year of demonstration funding. We also have our commuter assistance program applications. We got about 24 applications in that program. That's pretty typical. And then our human service agencies that provide transportation, like we were talking about earlier this morning, Mr. Smoot, for seniors, individuals with disabilities, and veterans. We saw a very strong year in that program, looking for vehicles. So big year. We'll get through all of this. I will caution you that we hope to have a full set of recommendations, but the March board is kind of at the middle of the month, and the draft program is due at the end of the month. So we'll give you a sneak preview, at least in March, as we try to work through all those items. Happy to take any questions.
In round numbers, how much money do you have to allocate?
I feel like we're in good shape. Money-wise, the actions that the board took in December and January kind of freed up a log jam that was in the capital program.
Okay.
So from that perspective, and with not any real big major expansion ask, I feel like we're in a good place.
Okay.
Great.
That was a very political
Yep.
answer.
Thank
I was
you.
thinking zeros and eights when you said round numbers.
Round numbers.
Yeah. I also neglected to ask for approval of the minutes from the January meeting. Would anyone like to make an approval?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. So next, I'm going to ask Emily to give us a quick update on the Freight Advisory Committee. I know at the last meeting, a number of you had some questions about what's happening with the freight railroads, how we can better understand some of their market trends and industry drivers that are affecting their decisions right now. We do have some plans to bring in some of our partners from Class 1 railroads to future meetings. But in the meantime, I asked Emily to give us an update on the Freight Advisory Committee, which also has members of the trucking industry and shippers, so that you can get a sense of what they're doing as well, because there will be future meetings that you may be interested in participating in.
Great, thank you very much, Jennifer. So yes, I'm a member of the Freight Advisory Committee representing Department of Rail and Public Transportation. This is a relatively new committee. It started about a year ago, and it came out of some discussions that we were having at the Transportation Secretariat among VDOT and the Port of Virginia and the Office of Innovation. I don't know if you all are sure familiar with Kathy McGee. And so VDOT, Office of Intermodal Planning and Investment, OIP, was doing the statewide freight plan as part of VTrans. And of course, that's a federally required plan, and they were folding it into the VTrans process, and all of us were involved in giving feedback, but we recognized a need to do something bigger and something sustained rather than just for this statewide freight plan requirement every few years that US DOT requires. I'm sorry, I think I said FRA, but it's US DOT requires. So we decided to start this Freight Advisory Committee, which Jennifer mentioned includes members of the freight community, both private sector and public sector, the Port of Virginia, and also Norfolk Southern, CSX participate, Buckingham Branch Railroad and other short lines, the trucking industry, and shippers, so both and manufacturers like Westvaco, and also warehouse operators and developers. So anyway, it runs the gamut, and we meet about every quarter. We just had a meeting last week, and actually Secretary Miller came and introduced himself, and so we gave him a little introduction to the group. And our next meeting is in May. I think it's May 17th, and it's going to be in Norfolk at the port. So we may be able to have a tour of the port as part of that meeting. And as Jennifer also mentioned, we've invited Norfolk Southern and CSX to come to our next two meetings. So CSX is invited for our this meeting, the subcommittee meeting. CSX is invited for the subcommittee's March meeting, and then Norfolk Southern is invited for the April meeting. So we're hoping to get some more discussion around freight and about the industry drivers. And I think the Freight Advisory Committee group is a good group to get plugged into, but obviously we want to bring that information to you all as well. So this last Freight Advisory Committee meeting, There was a lot of discussion about the bipartisan infrastructure law, and we had a presentation from Ben Manel from VDOT about the BIL and potential programs that could be open for freight applications from Virginia. Of course, all the agencies have been asked to come up with a strategy for federal funding, and so DRPT is going to be working with VDOT with the Port of Virginia on a strategy for freight projects in particular. And as you all are familiar, not all of the NOFOs are out, so we don't know exactly what all of these programs are going to look like going forward, but we certainly want to continue that discussion, and the discussion is starting with the Secretary's office, and we want to continue that with our partners as well.
Great, thank you. Questions?
Can I ask a quick question? So Emily, is VDP part of this?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, and DMV as well, because of truck weight issues, that sort of thing.
Right.
So yes, the EDP is part of it, and of course they have a sites program,
Right.
and so making sure that rail cert sites are communicated clearly on their website, and also making sure that we prepare and really pay attention to rail serve sites is important in helping localities understand the types of development that needs to be restricted around rail serve sites to continue for them to continue to be rail served. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, two things. There's continuing conversation going on about an additional inland port in Virginia. Any insight into how that might play out?
So that, you are absolutely right, and actually Secretary Miller did mention that possibility at the Freight Advisory Committee meeting last week. We also heard calls for that, not necessarily inland port, but more intermodal facilities from the port director, Stephen Edwards, at the Governor's Transportation Conference in the fall. So it's something that's on our radar. And of course, it's something that's been studied quite a bit. I can see some possibilities for really looking at that more seriously and reopening that research.
Good. So second question, back in the fall, the West Coast ports were having a lot of issues receiving shipping freight. The East Coast ports generally did not experience at least that same level of issue. But I have heard some discussion that while the port, Virginia, functioned quite well, there were some issues getting rail transportation from the port. Is that true? And if so, what's the problem?
I think we need to ask our folks who are coming to visit us for some more details on that. I can't comment. I do know that grade separations around the port are something that we look at. That a lot of the applications that we get from railroads and from the port are related to grade separations. So that's something that we can pay attention to. And Mike, as he presents about the freight program, may be able to talk about some of the applications that are coming through that might be able to these improvements that might be able to address that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So next I'm going to ask Mike Todd to give us an update on the rail industrial access application. This is also going to be covered in the workshop later, but we wanted to give you all an opportunity just to ask us any additional questions that you would have before getting into the workshop. I don't think you're going to get the whole presentation, but.
Yeah, no, thank you. I have the presentation here, and we can go through any element that you'd like. Typically, just to kind of outline the process, we do a full presentation to the board, month one, month two, we then bring it back for action, and then from there, we would administer the project. So it's kind of a two-phase. And so we were just starting here to introduce the idea that Wythe County has submitted a rail industrial access application. It's actually for the AGI. There's a big economic development kind of package down in Wythe County with AGI. I think it was over $700 million, the total investment, thousands of jobs, and it scores really well as a rail industrial access grant application. So that's what the presentation is. I'm happy to go through it or show slides if people want to. In the interest of time, I'm happy just to take questions as well.
We'll just flip through the slides. Yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of just start with an introduction to the application itself. Essentially what they're applying for here is to bring some of the processing materials for making the nitrile gloves in through rail. It's 45 to 65%, or excuse me, 55% split rail and truck. So this is one of those situations where the growth that's coming out of this economic development is being shared across the two modes.
Is that both inbound and outbound, that 45-55 split?
Yes, I believe so, yeah. For the most part, yes, in and outbound, yep. So I have some locational photos just showing Wythe County, and then also, the picture on the right isn't meant to reference anything specifically. It's just to show this is a large site that Wythe County has been developing for quite some time. There are existing buildings on the site, and it's really kind of one of their shining examples of what they've done over the years, kind of in that region to develop an economic development site. And then further for site details itself, essentially what they've applied for here is that red line, it's 3,000 feet of new industrial spur. And the pictures on the right just show that, literally we're extending an existing spur. It's really ready to go. It's graded. All they'd have to do is just lay the track bed. So it's a great project site. And then let me actually bump through a couple of these. I kind of add as we go the different elements of the application requirements. So we look in the application, we look at the budget and how it relates to the total investment, what they've asked us for. We look at the carload information, how many new carloads are being projected. We look at employment, and then we kind of add all those together. In this case, it scores 70 out of 100, 50 is the minimum.
I don't think we've seen many that score 70.
I wouldn't think so.
And then the one other thing that we kind of added is we used our benefit cost analysis model to kind of espouse some of the other benefits to the transportation network. These are outside of the specific application criteria, but it kind of shows that by shipping things multimodally, by diverting some of that growth to the rail network, we can save on safety and congestion costs, pavement maintenance, and emissions. And I specifically highlighted that it's about 20,000 tons of greenhouse gas reduction annually as a result of shipping these by rail. And then just go over today we're just doing the workshop presentation, then we'll ask for approval next month and then execute the agreement.
And then there is also a VEDP grant associated with this one as well. Is that correct?
There are multiple, yes. So VEDP, they have $16 million as originally as part of kind of the enticement package, I guess, to locate in Wythe County. And then additionally, they have another a little over 4 million actually to do some of the job force, workforce training for the jobs that are coming as part of this. So in two cases.
Like there's a story in the media over the weekend that one of the two partners in this project is pulled out. Is that a problem or not?
This is a Wythe County app. One of the things that makes it slightly unique is that it's a Wythe County application. And so this is the, county's, kind of attempt to divert some of the truck traffic that's going to be heading out onto I-81. And so I don't know what, arrangements Wythe County has made with the economic development and the specific parties involved, but as far as our grant, it's not impacted.
It It's one of the two partners in the Blue Star Glove
Okay.
project.
Are they
One in
American?
Maryland, I think, is pulled out.
Are they American companies?
Yes, they are. And the story oddly didn't say whether that was going to impact moving forward with the project or not.
Okay.
It is a very big project, 2,500 jobs.
Right.
There's some speculation in the region as to where these 2,500 people are going to come from, but there are various vocational programs being put in place to help supply that. They're very good paying jobs if it becomes a reality.
So I guess the question for us then is what happens if somebody makes an application, we make an award, and then it falls through in this program? And we know what happens with the other kind of, development act, the EDA program, what happens with this one?
Yeah, so we have two safety mechanisms for, expending state dollars. First is it's a reimbursement-based program. So the grantee has to spend the money first. So I guess as an example, if we maybe signed the agreement, executed, and they were moving forward and then never actually ended up implementing, they would never have spent any money. We would never have given them any money. And so we could just basically cancel the agreement at that point. In the sort of, worst case scenario would be they would spend some money, ask for reimbursement, we'd reimburse, and then the project would kind of fall apart later. In that scenario, we have a clawback provision where we monitor their performance. If they don't meet the carloads that they promised in the application, then we pull the money back from them. So we actually, collect the money from them, which we have done in the past. Some previous projects have not met the performance and we've gotten the money back.
Thanks.
Is that what you call bonded or not bonded projects? There's another presentation somewhere.
That's the
For
road
the-
thing. That's
The
the
house, the
VDOT,
road,
economic
yeah,
development.
roads.
Right. Yeah, that's true. VDOT has a presentation about their economic development program, and actually they highlight the With County Economic Development
Yeah.
site as part of it.
They do.
And there have been instances where unfortunately we have had to claw back money where either for whatever reason the venture doesn't move forward or change in economic conditions. But it doesn't happen very often, but it is something that the state has done in the past. So, yeah.
That ends the presentation, and of course I'll go into more detail as we go through today in the workshop.
Okay, thank you. And then Mike is also going to talk with us about the changes to the freight rail program. We were just made aware this morning that there was a document that did not go out with the CTB package, and we apologize for that. Not sure what happened. But Mike's going to go through the changes because it may not have been clear from the materials that you received what that change was. And because the reason we're bringing this to the action agenda today is there is a lack of clarity with, in particular, one area of our guidelines that had to do with eligibility of projects and some wording that was confusing. Upon the advice of the Attorney General's office, since this had been approved already by the CTB, we were trying to figure out, can we go forward with these applications as they are? And they suggested that we bring it back to CTB now, since we are going through the application review process as we speak, to be able to clarify, or it's literally deleting 2 words, to clarify the eligibility of our projects too. But anyway, because we're not workshopping this first, we wanted to make sure we had a chance to bring it to you all to go through it in a little bit more detail as well. So.
Awesome, thank you. So I have the resolution here that's included in your packet, and I kind of highlighted 2 things, and I hope this is a good way to go through this situation. But so first, essentially what we wanted to note is that we have a technical correction to the guidance that was adopted previously. And so, as Jennifer mentioned, we received this is the first year we're administering this program, first year that we accepted applications, and we got some questions as you would expect. In order to clarify some of those questions, we were going to make an update to the guidance, but then received some input from the Attorney General's office that said, well, since it's an attachment to a resolve to a resolution of the board, we have to be really careful about how and when we make corrections in terms of transparency and public documentation. So with that advice, we literally have made 2 corrections. First and foremost, the logo. It changed some colors. We're going through a branding update at DRPT. We're creating new logos. We're creating a good cohesive color scheme. So that's one.
I don't think that right.
That was CTB. That's not why we're bringing this here.
But I will get to like the second part of the resolution that I'm glad you noted that. So the other thing, in the old guidance, there was literally basically a higher level bullet to this bulleted list of eligible projects that said improvements to. So it said, eligible projects, improvements to, and then railways, railroad equipment, rolling stock, rights of way, et cetera. What we started getting questions of, well, how do you make an improvement to engineering and design? How do you make an improvement to environmental? So, that obviously causes some issues. Then we also received some interest and applications for the purchase of right-of-way, which increased carload throughput, but didn't actually have any construction involved. So then again, the question was, well, is that an improvement? We're just buying the right-of-way so that we can push, and so we were just going to take improvements to out, but then that might cause a kind of a public transparency issue, and we did not want that to happen. So
I'm sorry, Michael, where were these inquiries coming from about?
our applicants,
Oh, applicants were asking if that.
Yeah, as they were-
constituted an improvement.
Yeah,
Okay,
yep.
understood.
so they were looking through the guidance and trying to figure out how to apply it, and we're, following up with those types of questions. So we took those out. We took the improvements to out so that the guidance would be a little bit clearer. And so literally just taking those 2 words out and the logo, only things in the entire document that have changed. So what I want to highlight then is the other part of the resolution that I think is important is we're noting that we will prepare some more detailed program guidance where we can fully develop, detailed definitions. We can include like the questions that are in our application form. The reason why we didn't want to do that in the summary document that's attached is if we change anything in it, we would then have to come back to you. And maybe I'm being too blunt, but I feel like that's a waste of your time. We administer these, all of our programs in the same way. We create detailed guidance for staff to use with our potential applicants. And so we're just going to follow suit here as well.
And so is the slide we just saw the revision to this? It is. Can you flip back one?
Sure.
And just to highlight the last thing that Mike said here, we also added that statement because it's consistent with how we do it on our transit programs and elsewhere, where we do have something explicit in the resolution to say the agency is now going to prepare detailed guidance. That was not in the previous resolution. When this question came up and the AG's office raised some of these questions, that's why we went ahead and added that as well. So that's, yeah.
So this is a revised resolution from what's in our packet.
And this is the revised presentation.
Oh, what's in your packet? Okay, so yes, there was a little confusion. The resolution exactly the same as what I showed on the screen that
Is in the packet.
is in the packet,
Okay.
yes. I was just highlighting 2 things
Okay.
just as a way to walk through
Okay,
it.
because this just has.
What was missing was the attached updated guidance. I'm not sure why that got missed. We printed it out here today, so you have it in your hand.
This
I
is
think-
it?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
in your electronic board packet, I think the attachment
It
was
was not there.
missed for some reason, and I'm not sure why.
Okay, and so you just walked us through the technical changes.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Give us a generic example of a nonprofit organization being a recipient of one of these grants.
So first I'll say for eligible recipients, what we wanted to do is not limit who could potentially apply. Any applicant would have to work with the railroad, the railroad owner and operator. A nonprofit example could be an economic development group that is a nonprofit organization, and they might team up with the railroad for a project that helps, create jobs or just, spur economic development.
This is not a rails to trails sort of program.
this program is designed for freight capacity improvements. Freight rail capacity improvements.
So Norfolk Southern or the other railroads
CSX.
come to us and ask us for our money to increase their business. Yeah,
Well, the program, and this also applies to our short line railroads across the state as well. They can come and apply for funding to make improvements where there are benefits. And the guidelines do also go through the types of criteria that we use to evaluate whether or not that's a project that the state has an interest in. And, you know, primarily it's to remove bottlenecks, to be able to have an overall positive benefit cost analysis. So can you also mention the things that are in the benefit cost analysis?
Yeah, sure. So actually what we do is we take a look at the number of carloads, rail carloads that are going to be moved as a result of a project and for what distance they will be moved. And essentially the calculation that we make is by moving those goods by rail, we can reduce crashes on the highway network. We can save emissions. We can save on emissions. We save on pavement maintenance as well. You know, the trucks aren't going over the pavement and causing degradation. We also look at actually shipper cost savings, because for long distance hauls, it's actually more cost effective to ship by rail. So we go through multiple categories and compare essentially what is the benefit to Virginia versus what is the cost of Virginia for this project. And we make sure that the project the project benefit exceed the cost.
And the objective, as always, is to take carloads off the highways as well. So, okay. Any other questions right now?
Yeah, any other questions or concerns? So just to make sure that I won't be doing a presentation during the workshop. This will just come during the action agenda.
So the amount of money currently involved here is how much?
So as part of the Commonwealth Rail Fund, the estimate is around $10 to $11 million annually, depending on the revenues. That's also shared with the Rail Preservation Program, and then also any rail planning initiatives that DRPT undertakes. So the freight program itself has less, but it depends on, you know, what's going on in those other programs each year.
And we do have the ability out of this program to make multi-year agreements if appropriate. Okay.
Awesome. That's it for me.
Okay. Well, we actually went through the agenda items a little faster than I had expected this morning. We were actually trying not to overload it because we knew we had less time than we normally do. So we actually cut a couple things out. Now
No, you're fine.
yeah, exactly. But since we're here, I will just elaborate on a couple other things that were announcements and updates that I was going to provide later. But just a few more things on the rail planning side. We are working on this is in response to some General Assembly legislation last year to do a study of a multimodal connection study connecting Roanoke to the Clifton Forge rail station through bus connections. And that was something that was, I believe, proposed by Delegate Austin. So we will be looking at that as part of a planning study this spring. It's due to the General Assembly at the end of June 2022. temporarily canceled because of COVID. That's our Newport News originating service, has now been canceled through March 27th of 2022 due to staff shortages, primarily related to COVID.
It's Amtrak.
Amtrak service. I don't know, DJ, if you got any updates, no news on that one?
No, that's the current.
Okay, gotcha. And overall, our ridership is holding steady. Statewide, the ridership is still down about 20% compared to what it was in pre-pandemic levels. And as we know, there were some weather disruptions last month as well, but we are optimistic we'll continue to see more increases in the future. So with that, I don't think I've got any other additions to the agenda. Is there anyone here for public comment? Okay.
Can
Yeah, sure.
I actually have a question, and I think it's more for DJ, because we're getting the VPRA budget
Yes.
as a presentation. And when I was looking at it, I was surprised to see Smart Scale listed as a source, a multi-year source. And I would love to have an explanation.
So that's the $50 million that you all approved for the Roanoke
Okay.
extension.
Okay.
That went through the last round of Smart.
Came out of the I-81.
No, that's in addition
That's
to the
in addition.
I-81 funding.
Yeah, I-81 is another line.
Yeah.
Right, so any Smart Scale application that VPRA would make in the future would have to compete in the same way that we did with the last 15 years.
Yeah, this was actually a CTB. Remember, you all may
we
recall that the
made that.
CTB actually put that into Smart Scale.
But
And
can
so,
VPRA put things into Smart Scale?
I don't know that VPRA is an eligible organization under Smart Scale. We'd have to, I really would have to check that, or if that's something that,
Mike's shaking his head.
No, the state agencies are not.
yeah, yeah.
Okay,
So, but this one was the application, or it was actually, I guess the project was submitted by CTB into the last round of Smart Scale as a CTB. I don't know if it's correct to call it an application, but it was a CTB submission
Right.
for that. So
okay, so,
that's that $50, and that's in addition to the funding from I-81.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. It wasn't clearly identified as a previous project
Okay.
in the document, so it might be, it just says, Smart Scale is this percentage of it, and it was a little confusing.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, we can make sure that we, when we have the next iteration of the document, make sure that's a little
Just
clearer.
asterisk and say, CTB awarded next year.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yes.
Jennifer, regarding ridership, I believe you said that it's down about 20% or so from pre-COVID levels. What about VRE and Metro?
Sure. VRE service is actually down quite a bit. The last I checked, you may have the 20% of about what prior year, so it's down about 80% still.
80.
Yeah. So VRE service is very commuter focused. It goes from outer parts of Virginia into DC in the morning, and then the trains go out in the afternoon. They are very highly dependent on what the federal government is doing. And since the federal government has not yet called employees back into the office, and for those of you from Northern Virginia, everybody else in DC follows whatever the federal government does. So once the federal government says they're bringing people back, all the government contractors, everybody else tends to follow suit. So there's a great amount of interest in seeing how that is going to evolve. We keep hearing that the federal government may be bringing people back in higher numbers in March, but that's still very speculative. I know you know very much the impact it's having, not just on VRE, but Metro, the DC, just general DC economy right now, without having the federal workforce there has changed a lot, so.
And nobody knows if it's going to actually come back to the level that it was at. I think there's a real expectation that several days a week of telework will be available to most employees, most federal employees, and that will push the numbers down without a doubt.
Yeah, I think the one thing though that we, that VRE has such a major impact on I-95 and I-66. The amount of ridership that they were carrying pre-pandemic was about equivalent to a lane of traffic on each highway during the peak period. And so even with, I mean, right now, as you all probably heard from VDOT, traffic levels on 95 and 66 are back to where they were pre-pandemic or higher. As people start to come back in even greater numbers, I think it's fair to say that we need to see more people returning to transit and rail to, because the roads are at capacity during rush hour, much like they were for pre-pandemic. So, but VRE plays a very important role in relieving congestion in those two corridors. So, yeah, but they are still down to about that level.
I don't understand though, if the car traffic is equal to or greater than it was before.
And truck traffic, it includes truck traffic as well, which is how
Why are you
People
riding
aren't
the train?
slugging,
Yeah.
people aren't
I mean, that
slugging
makes
on,
sense.
they're not carpooling, they're not, yeah.
there
returning
is a
to transit.
single person in a car.
But where are they going? They're not going.
Well, they're
federal
going
jobs.
to work.
There are still people going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people. I mean, there's also I think it's fair to say it's at the expense of transit right now, transit and carpool. There are still people going to work, a lot of, essential workers in DC still.
And I think the peak period has changed, so people are traveling more, so it's a little bit more spread out, so there's less traffic jam, but heavy volumes kind of consistently for more hours. I think that was what.
I just
the
can't see somebody sitting in that traffic when they can ride a train. It just makes no sense to me.
Now that,
What about Metro?
Metro ridership they've also been impacted by reductions in service.
Yeah, and
right now.
I want to know how that's coming along too. This
Yeah, I don't wanna
malfunction is, somebody, it seemed to me, was not minding the storm. I don't mean it, not our people, Metro people.
Yeah, first of all, I don't want to misspeak on Metro ridership. I need to check. I can get
But it's
back to
still
you.
down considerably, right?
It is still down. Bus service is actually not down as much. Bus service has started actually to sort of improve significantly. Rail service is down, also because headways have been.
well, they just announced that they're bringing trains back into
Yeah.
service to get us back
The
to.
equipment thing is,
Well, the equipment thing is still the equipment thing, but they are gonna run the trains more frequently. I live a block from the Orange Line.
Okay.
And the service was every 30 minutes, which we had Orange and Silver running through our station. It's not reasonable to go downtown in the middle of the day on the train because of how long it would take. So there's just an announcement 2 days ago maybe, or last Friday, saying they were gonna improve the headways on several of the lines that serve Virginia. So I'm hopeful it will help, but yeah.
I'm philosophically supportive both of BRE and Metro. That moves people, that's good. But I do think that we need to, and I'm sure you are, really, as we look to the future, are these patterns that we're now seeing going to alter transportation needs of regions, any region? And, who knows? But I do think we need to be mindful that the future may not look like the past.
Absolutely. There's a lot of discussion about that, not just in rail and transit, but with highways and sort of across the transportation industry as well. We do have a program that we are instituting right now. Let's see, I think Jen DeBrohl had to leave, but to help transit agencies return ridership. And we have some marketing campaigns underway that we've been partnering with some of our local agencies to try to help them get some customers back to transit. But also, you're absolutely right. I know Jen DeBrohl and I have spent a lot of time talking about the strategic planning requirements that DRPT has for transit systems. And right now, we develop pretty detailed guidelines about how those plans should be done to sort of make trade-offs between coverage and high capacity service. What we've talked about though is that, how do that planning have to change in the future to start looking instead at changes in ridership patterns overall and how transit may need to evolve and what role we should be playing in that.
You know, the big, I think the big problem is gonna come in the 24 budgets, right? Not in 23, because there's still federal money that's sort of floating Metro, covering the holes. And that's when we would be presented with some harder choices. So a year from now, basically, is when that, right? Well, that's when they'll start developing the 24 budget. So maybe it'd be useful for this committee to get like a quarterly
Sure.
sum up of ridership around the Commonwealth, you know, with the focus on the big players in terms of money, what's happening there, so that we're not, doesn't kind of slap us in the face next year.
Sure.
That we're ahead of the game in our understanding and what the options could be.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're talking as well, it occurred to me that it may also be helpful at one of our future meetings to bring in some people from Northern, either whether WMATA or VRE or both, or, you know, to talk a little bit about how, you know, trends are changing with our major operators up there, because they do have, you know, while it's only, you know, a few of them, they have a huge impact on our overall transit program, because they're, that's where the majority of statewide ridership is, so.
Okay,
Oh,
excuse me.
sorry.
I was gonna say, is the Silver Line still on track for May, April? Smile.
I haven't heard anything other than that.
Stay tuned,
Hard-
as
hard
they
short.
say.
They're very actively working to get it mobilized, and to, the Silver Line has been delayed by a number of different reasons, but they are doing readiness testing right now and operational testing. And looking, you know, WMATA's big concern right now is also making sure that some of the previous deficiencies that were identified have been remedied. But yeah, that, as far as we know, that's still the timeline.
Which is another financial pressure on the whole thing too, is, you know, running another, what, 10 miles, 12 miles of track.
And Jennifer, you shared earlier that there's work in progress related to being able to get on a train in Maryland commuter and go through the VRE, right? Is that still perking along?
Yeah, so where we are with, so that refers to what we call VRE MARC run-through service, and MARC is Maryland's commuter rail service, very similar to VRE. They have a line that essentially runs from points north of, or point in Baltimore, essentially south to into DC at Union Station, and also from their western part of their state too. COG, the Council of Governments, did a study a couple of years ago. God, it has been a couple of years now, that looked at some of the barriers and opportunities to bringing Maryland trains into Virginia and Virginia trains into Maryland. There's a couple infrastructure challenges that will be addressed. The capacity really will be opened up when Long Bridge is completed, as well as our fourth track project. We're looking at whether there may be some opportunities to do something prior to that with some existing rail slots. But there are some other technical challenges with platform heights being different, and also how some of the trains will currently traverse through Union Station. But it is something that I think there's a lot of interest in. Certainly, and some with members of the Maryland General Assembly have been pushing this really hard as well. And so we're working on an MOU with the Maryland Transit Administration to, I'm sure, I should say it, yeah, MOU to look at how we're going to continue to work together on this. That was something required by the General Assembly, but we are working through that MOU. I'm not sure exactly where it stands at the moment, but.
That's still perking.
It is still perking.
Good.
And actually, I think it would be a tremendous benefit to the DC area. It would really be game changing, actually, to have train service connecting both Maryland and Virginia, rather than just ending in DC and then people having to.
25,000 jobs coming to Crystal City.
Yeah.
With Amazon, for people to be able to come in on a train from Maryland.
That will all be people in Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay, any other
So did we finish the rail plan, the statewide rail?
We were going to give you a presentation on that today.
Oh.
We thought we were going to run short on time.
Okay, next time. Because we had a lot of input on how you guys presented things the last time, and I thought made the plan a lot stronger.
Yeah, we are working through it right now. Right now, we're in the throes of a service development plan to go along with that. So there's a lot of number crunching going on with our consulting team, and we'll be back out to you soon with information. And I do have an answer on the with county question on the real industrial access.
Sure.
So Dr. Smoot mentioned an article over the weekend. Since you mentioned that, our team has come together, and we have communicated with the county, the applicant, that the project is still on track. The schedule and for investment and for bringing on employees is still intact. So, and the agreement was with the company that did not pull out. So everything is still on track. And I know that there's some business issues that were complicating things, but BDDP is confirmed and the county is confirmed that the project is still stable.
Good, thank you.
All right, well, with that then, we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I know we have another committee meeting coming up, so.
Do we stay in this room?
I think it was
Oh, wait.
Oh, wait.
You don't know the subject.
Oh, okay, well, we have some public comment here.
Oh.
Okay. And,
Yeah. Still listening. Morning. CTB members, where do you want me to be?
He's right there,
Right
it's
there.
fine. If you want to put your things down, you can.
Thank you.
Here.
Even though I talk funny, I've been over here 53 years. And at the age of 5, I started riding on the top deck of double-deck buses to go to school. And one of my hopes is that under the present administration, that we will get double-deck buses in Virginia, certainly in Northern Virginia, on the heavily traveled routes. I've attended a couple of dozen CTB meetings in the last 5-7 years. I got involved in transportation issues because of the Silver Line project, Dallas Airport, and was opposed to the use of tolls for that purpose. And for several years, I was asking to see copies of a financial plan. And finally, sometime around 2017, I don't know if Steve Petard's in the room. Anyway, one day I had been asking because highway projects valued at $100 million or more require an annual financial plan. And there didn't appear to be any such requirement for transit and rail projects. So I suggested that it's about time that this be made a requirement. And to Secretary, sorry, still on the road. I have asked several times about this matter. So really, I want to know that transit and rail projects are treated in the same degree of financial due diligence. And that's my main concern. The other thing, which I wrote something a couple of days ago, some of you may have seen that the Purple Line project in suburban Maryland from Bethesda to Carrollton, they just approved the original contract that begged out because of disagreements on certain cost provisions. Anyway, the new contract was let, and it's now 68% higher than it was in 2016. And so I expressed concern given inflation now occurring in the United States, that's all the more reason to require this kind of annual financial plan process, which I don't know if Steve is here. I'm sorry, my eyes haven't adjusted from the road yet. So that's the main thing I wanted to ask of you. And obviously, whether it be a regulatory, I get some sense that something may have changed from 2 years ago, but I don't know what. And I just think there should be a degree of clarity, because unfortunately, the nature of the complex projects, there are problems that occur, like in the Silver Line Phase 2, you obviously have had a lot of problems. It's still unclear to me whether or not there will be any financial consequence to taxpayers. I should have said I'm Rob Whitfield with the Fairfax County Taxpayers Alliance Board. But anyway, that's what I want to pursue with you all. And I'll try and meet with others down here today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, before you leave, making sure that you've signed up on this sheet so that, oh, is it there? Okay, so Lynn has it. Great. All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments right now? All right, well, thank you all. Then we're going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.